Welcome to the 145 Rural Podcast, where we are here to strengthen music careers and communities one song at a time. And now, here's your host, Jacob Wing. Yay!
Hello, and welcome to the 145 Rural Podcast. Happy to have you with us. And today we are very lucky to have Karsen Krebs with us. Krebs, because I can speak words. And it's really great to have you here. He has just released his first 5-song album, and that came out in January, I believe.
Yep, in January.
That's awesome.
Courtesy of Jake here.
Yeah, well, he was in our studio, so that's how I got to know him. And I was like, everybody needs to hear some of the things this guy has to say. And if you guys have a second, you can stop right now. Maybe just go take a quick listen to those songs. They're on Spotify. They're everywhere. Take a listen to them. It's really fantastic. It's called Dirt Road Dream, I believe.
Yep, the EP's Dirt Road Dream. There was a single, Worth a Shot, that came out a week prior to that. But yep, Dirt Road Dream's a 5-song EP.
It's really good. Oh, you guys should take a listen. It's one of my favorites. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but it's one of my faves. But we'll just get going. So I just want to first know, let's talk about you. How did you first find out in your life that you wanted to start doing music, that was going to be something that you wanted to pursue?
This is a question I was thinking about. And it's kind of, I feel like it's not an easy question for me to answer. I don't feel like there was a major defining moment of like when I was like, oh, music, this is it. Or even when I discovered that I maybe had a talent for it or above average. I don't know. All I can really say is I remember like going to piano lessons when I was younger. My mom really encouraged, she wanted us to have a musical foundation, us being me and my brother. She thought that would just be cool. She always told us that chicks dig the music.
I love it.
She said, chicks dig music. You guys got to play something. And, of course, being in like junior high, we're like, oh, what does that matter?
You girls.
Yeah. And but we did. We're trying to satisfy mom's wishes there, and we did it. And like, I enjoyed piano, but then I got to like this stage, it's just like everybody growing up where it was like, oh, this isn't cool too, where I was like going to piano lessons after school, and I wasn't like, all my friends were like going to sports, but piano, I'd say, was like an actual like formal kind of foundation to my music. My parents say like I was singing obviously from a young age, and I truly can't remember like a moment where I was like, oh, I love to sing, and this is where like this is something I feel real like I'm good at. But I don't know, at some point that was where I was at. I felt like I was good at singing. I would just keep it like a private thing. And then it just kind of developed from there.
Fantastic. And so when did you have your first performance? Can you remember? Legit you performance.
Well, I guess if this would count, my first like public display of singing was I did perform the national anthem at, I played baseball all through high school.
Right, yeah.
And
I'm from pitcher, right?
I did pitch a little bit. I was more of like a position player. I played middle infield. But I did pitch once in a while. I never did like the whole pressure thing in the pitching.
Yeah.
But
so then no pressure thing, and then you go sing the national anthem.
Right? No pressure thing. Yeah. So I remember, like my friends on the team like knew I like that they knew I liked to sing, and everybody kind of like knew that. Like, oh, Karsen's pretty good at singing, but I still kept it kind of private. Right. And everybody was like always trying to encourage me to like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I was still just so shy about it. But yeah, like I played in Polson for the Mission Valley Mariners up there, because I'm from Plains and was just too small of a town. We didn't have a high school baseball,
right.
Non-existent. So I had to go up there, and it was like we were hosting this big 4th of July tournament. There was quite a few people there. And it was like to kick off the whole tournament. It's 4th of July, national anthem. And they're like, yeah, you got to sing. Everybody's kind of forced me into it. And I was nervous.
I bet.
I was nervous. And so I go up there, and my mom, of course, she's always so proud of everything I do, especially when it comes to music. But she was behind me filming, and I'm like facing out. So it's like, at least you don't get to see my face. I'm glad you don't get to see that. But I was shaking like a leaf the whole video. Like, I hate watching that video because I was literally shaking, and it's so embarrassing. But that was my first, I guess if you want to call it performance.
Oh, that really is.
Of just singing in front of like people. and really putting it out there. Trying to think of where I would actually the first time ever performing, just like actually singing, um, like actual music instead of just like an anthem like that.
Right.
It'll come to me here.
Yeah, of course. After
eventually,
this, that's how it always works.
yeah.
Stupid pressure situations. So after that, when was the next time that you decided that I'm going to take this a little bit further? When did you like start writing and doing your own songs?
The writing was interesting for me. It was like this concept that like I couldn't quite grasp. It felt like for the longest time I wanted to be a songwriter like desperately. I wanted to write my own music, and I was so lost about where to start. I think that's one of the reasons why this is going to be awesome for people that were like in my position there, this podcast.
Exactly.
Because I was lost. Like I didn't know where to start. I suppose I could have YouTubed like how do you write a song,
Right,
but I
right.
didn't. I don't know. It felt too cliche for me, so I just kind of like was stubborn about it and trying to figure out how do you do this. Do you like start with a melody? Do you start with guitar parts? Like, do you have the lyrics? I don't know. I think it's different. I think I've kind of discovered that over time that it's the creative process is different,
Mhm.
and it's okay to be different for each song in a project. But
That's a really good point,
it took
yeah.
a long time for me. I just did like covers for the longest time and thought about like my sound and like what I wanted my sound to be like. And then it just I think that the very first song, it was kind of crazy. Like I said, I had this like huge writer's block. I didn't know what to do. And one day I just went down. I remember actually, I think my mom had just was she had like she was mad at me about something and she was yelling at me, and I was like, I'm just gonna go separate myself. And I went down to the basement with my guitar and it whipped out a song.
Just like that.
In literally like 45 minutes. Yeah, like after seriously like probably really thinking about it for like over a year, like, how do I do this? And I went down there in like 45 minutes and wrote a song, and it's called Wishing Well,
Mhm.
the very first
Oh,
song I ever
okay, yeah,
wrote.
yeah.
And it's on that EP, Dirt
Yep,
Road Dream.
yep. That's a great song. I
Wishing
love
Well
that
was
song.
the very first song I ever wrote, and it started with just some chords that like a chord progression that I liked and a couple that were like a little bit different that I didn't hear all the time. And I don't know, the lyrics just kind of flowed from there. I had a chorus and a little
Just
bit of a
had one
hook,
song,
and
but
then there
that's
it went.
amazing.
I was actually even shocked myself. Like, wow, did I just actually write a song? I don't even, not saying it was good. I did at that time.
No,
I just was
I
like,
get it.
I wrote a song. I'm like, wow.
So did you have to take any extra time to polish it out, or is it just like this is ready to go? Like, it's done. This is what I wanted.
There
out of
was
this.
definitely some adjustments in just kind of like inflection and stuff that in like extending notes, maybe in like the chorus and figuring out a bridge. But I mean, the bones of it and pretty much all of it, like, and that's still, I think, to this day, is the quickest song I've ever written.
course.
So it's very
Like,
strange.
this is gonna be easy from now on. I got this.
And I
It's just
don't
gonna
look
come out of
back at
nowhere.
that song and really and dislike it even after all this time and say like, oh, I just didn't know what I was doing. I do genuinely like that song, and I think I could hear somebody else writing a song like that actually knew a lot more than me. But
It's a fantastic song. I really love that song.
but I remember I played it for my parents, and they were like, "You wrote this? You're kidding, right? Like this is just somebody." And
The
I'm like-
shock factor?
I was like, "No, I actually wrote." I was like, "I'm just as shocked. I wrote this."
And that's just if you hear that out outside, that's Kenai, is that right?
Yep, we have a special guest,
He's,
Kenai here, came
probably
with me
came to
today.
visit us. And of course, my dog in the background is just gonna be yelling the whole time because he wants to visit too.
We're very pet
A little
friendly.
jealous,
Pet
but-
friendly here at
Yeah,
Illegal
gotta
Studio.
have dogs. If you don't have animals around, then you're doing something wrong. That's always been my view. But so you go from there, and you've written your first song. What was the next step for you?
Just kind of keep writing, keep that momentum. I think that's hard. I'm kind of like at a point right now, actually, where I've just like currently in this moment, I've hit like feel like another little bit of writer's block, and I've just had a lot of other things going on
Mm-hmm.
that I've kind of dropped the ball a little bit on the writing side of things. I have a couple songs that are like I feel like are good foundations or stuff that I plan on finishing soon, as long as when I get the creative and get back into that groove.
Yep,
But I think that was like the next step, was trying to keep that momentum. and it wasn't easy, you know, because that, like I said, I was still not like I knew what I was doing. I had written one song, and I'm like, okay, now what do I do? I kind of want to. I need to build a little bit of a catalog still, and like try to just craft that sound. Um, I didn't. It wasn't like I wrote that song and then I went out and was like, all right, I need to start performing this one right away. I kind of like held it back and didn't. I mean, like I said, I played for my parents. I didn't really like show anybody else it for quite a while, I would say. Um, but I just writing more songs and then just seeing like how that goes, like the process from start to finish. And I feel like that was like another little thing I stumbled in was a rut where, okay, I did that one like this. Like they got all like start that same way,
Yeah.
which I come to find out, you know, no, they're
Set-
not always
set a very
gonna,
high
they're not gonna
bar for
always be
yourself.
like, I
Yeah.
actually, there was a few of them like Dirt Road Dream, the title track, that one was just actually lyrics. That song is purely started with lyrics with
You're
like
kidding me.
nothing to it.
You really have
Nothing
used
to it.
every angle.
Like the opening verse of that song was just lyrics, just words on a page and with nothing else. And I sat on them for a long time. I liked the words and I was like, this is gonna be a song.
Oh.
And it had a totally different sound in my head actually, than how it turned out. But not because of what I'm not saying what happened in the studio, but just like from when I actually
The
brought
vision you
like my
had.
acoustic version of Life to it. It had a totally different mood and feel to what I had originally planned for those lyrics. But I like how it turned out a lot. I
Oh my
love
gosh,
it.
that
I love that
song
song.
is just an earworm. It
I-
really, and the thing I felt that was one of the songs that you tell amazing stories when you're with your lyrics and how you phrase things. But that one just felt like it really resonates with almost everybody. There's just something
Yeah.
in there for everybody.
Yeah, there's something a little bit nostalgic about it, and you know, there's real experience in there, and then there's other stuff that's just kind of, it's not necessarily happened to you, but you just kind of people I know, and then like just an audience, you know, you can connect with, and share that. But that song is still I probably the one I've listened to the most.
I think I agree with
at
you, yeah.
post production. I think I've listened to that one the most. And I can see on like the insights from everyone else. I think that's the song that's been listened to the most as
It's
well.
one of those things where I'm driving down the road. I want it as part of my rotation in my playlist, just because
Yeah.
it gives you that certain feel of like, yeah, it's almost like motivating in a way of like, yeah, this is
Well,
this is
and
where I
some
wanna
of
be right now.
that instrumentation that you guys like you and brought in with that what that kind of like haunting guitar sound
Oh,
we have in
yeah,
the
yeah,
beginning,
yeah, that's
that it just, I love that. So
That was fun. And I just remember, just as a little side note, with talking about your mom and how much she supports you. And you sent me a text about, my mom says it sounds like something.
Oh,
It sounds
yeah,
like Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac,
And I was
Wicked
like,
Game.
That's so funny. That's just dead
yeah,
on.
the first time she listened to it, she was like, "Oh, I love this guitar in it." She's like, "It reminds me of a song that I used to listen to, and I just can't pinpoint it." And then like she eventually just thought of it like about an hour later. She's like, "Oh, it's like Chris Isaac, Wicked Game." And then I was like, "Oh, it totally does remind me of that too."
I was just laughing.
love
my head
it. I
off
love
over
it.
It's so good. That's such a great song, though. Just fantastic. So, what else did you do to invest in your moving forward as a musician?
I know. I'm
and
like, I feel like
artist?
I kind of get a little sidetracked. I'm
that's
trying
totally
to,
fine.
I'm trying to think of more, like the steps I took, because it was definitely a slow process for me. Like I didn't, like I say, I started with the piano, and then I kind of gave that up, and the singing thing was totally private for me. I didn't share with anybody. I mean, and then it was just like a slow step thing where like, okay, I now was comfortable singing in front of family. And then, you know, I get into high school and I'm like, I'm comfortable singing like in my truck in front of like my good friends.
Right.
And they're like, oh man, you're good. And you don't really believe them, but you're like, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, whatever.
they're
You
just being
feel,
nice.
yeah,
That'd
you
be
feel
kind.
comfortable doing that. But still, I wasn't like, I was just like singing. I would just like singing people on the radio. I wasn't like really doing anything artistically myself. And then it was, I think my sophomore year, my mom bought me a guitar because she was like, she was still kind of like, don't you want to, she was bummed I had like stopped at the
Right.
piano, and she's like, don't you want to continue with music? Like,
Doing
don't you
that
wanna-
mom thing
let's
with
play
maybe
some
that little
instrument, like
shove.
a guitars would be cool. Like everybody, like, yeah, like people love like people with guitars. And I was like, yeah, you're really right. Like I'd like to learn to play guitar. But the thing is, like, it is frustrating in the beginning playing guitar. Everybody's been there, and like I'm nowhere I have no claim to fame on like my guitar playing ability to this day, but the beginning is challenging. It's like just discouraging. Like chord shapes can be hard, especially like bar chords. You're like, oh, I'll never do it. I'll never get this done. Your fingers are sore. They're not used to it. You don't have calluses, and it just doesn't. Nothing sounds right. So you're like, I'm not gonna. This is stupid. I'm not gonna keep doing this if you don't really have the motivation, which I admire those people that do. That are just completely all self-taught and just grind it out. And like they're kids. I wish I would have started, when I was like 5 years old on a guitar, because you see some of these kids now that are just incredible. But so I kind of then set the guitar aside too because of those reasons. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's high school now, and I want to be playing sports and hanging out with my friends, and I'm not good enough that like it's not good. And so then it was, and fast forward to into college, then I picked up the guitar again in my spare time and was starting to self-teach and found an instructor, which was like, I think a huge, that was a huge
like
thing.
A catalyst to get you built.
Exactly. A catalyst is a perfect description for that. It was just like that extra motivation. It's just like going to the gym. Having someone help, like kind of hold you accountable. I think it's a big thing.
That is the perfect analogy
there. Like I said, I really admire the people that are like all self-taught, like all independent, but I'm not that kind of person.
Everybody's different. Yeah. Their learning styles are different.
To have somebody that was just there next to me, like, and he was the most, I think that was the beautiful part about it. Shout out, his name's Kyle Brenner, and he's in Bozeman, and he has a band that plays around, and he's awesome. But Kyle's just his personality and everything about him made it so fun and like inviting. It like kind of changed my whole perspective on it again. That I was like, okay, I can do this, and like this can be fun even when I'm struggling to like make progress. And that just like opened the door again to like, okay, I made it my goal. Then I want to be able, like, I feel good about singing, but I don't want to share it until I have something I can accompany myself with. So this is like been a long loop around, but that was kind of like where I felt like in the steps for my progression. I didn't want to go out and publicly put myself on display like as a cappella. I didn't think that was I don't know, this wasn't something I was going to do. So I wanted to be able to at least to accompany myself with an instrument. What more perfect than a guitar? So again, Kyle kind of put me on the right steps and progression there, and I got to the point where like I was like a campfire kind of guitar player where like I knew the basic chords.
So, I love talking about goals. And so you said what was the exact goal that you kind of gave yourself there?
My goal was like that exact goal was I wanted to be able to play the guitar sufficient enough to play like where I would feel comfortable playing in front of people.
Right.
I didn't want to just single strum embarrassing kind of like, okay, I barely know this, everybody.
Right.
Bear with me. I wanted to be able to like do some strumming patterns and like know, a good amount of chords and like the songs that I liked.
Right.
I guess that's part of the goal. Like there was like all these songs that I liked. I think that's a huge motivator for like people that are like newbies trying to
shape their sound and be like
that was another really challenging phase. Was then okay, I can kind of play the guitar, but and then like I knew I already could sing, but pairing them together, that was another huge huge hurdle.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to describe it in words. And
we're inundated with all these amazing artists, music. They make it look so easy. Yeah. And then when you first sit down and you want like, I'm going to play and sing, it's a whole thing.
It's like it was incredibly challenging looking back. To like putting the two together, it's weird. You almost feel stupid.
I know.
You like. Why can I not sing while I'm like you can like I could do single strums and then sing to that, but I could not do like a strum pattern. It takes time. That's just the thing you got to accept is it takes time. It takes practice. And I remember I think the first song I ever like actually sang and played to was "Drinking Problem" by Midland.
Oh yeah, great one.
And I still like I open up with that song a lot of time because like it was like the foundation for me, and I love that song.
It's got the nostalgia.
Like I know, I just know it so well. But that was another big hurdle, and getting past that, then that opened a lot of doors, and then you can kind of like you can work on getting better at your guitar playing and more comfortable with it, gain the confidence in it. That was all necessary, at least in my mind, before I started my own like artistry, like of trying to write my own music.
Oh, that's fantastic, and that's something that we've actually on the show talked about quite a bit, where you kind of figure out where you're weakest or where you need to keep readdressing, getting better in this area and that area, just kind of building up. And so that kind of speaks to that a bit of how to kind of keep growing
Yeah.
and moving in that direction.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting because like looking back, like I would say that like what that was my goal, and I could think it'd be interesting because I bet there's some people that their driving goal there is like they have already like a start of like music, like a song maybe that they have in mind of their own thing, and that's what's pushing them. Like I didn't have like, okay, I have this and I want to be able to make it a song. I just purely was like, I want to be able to cover these songs
Right.
that I like and love, and then move on from there. But
Well, that's fantastic and extremely insightful. So really appreciate
yeah,
the deep dive on that one.
yeah.
That's extremely helpful for a lot of people I know. Um, so we've got to that point where you're getting more comfortable. You can play in front of people. What is the next thing for you? Where are you playing shows at this point? Are you
Yeah. So that's a process in itself. It's like booking with and finding places when you don't, especially don't have like a resume. Is kind of like for a job, normal jobs, you got like resumes and interviews.
right?
But when
Yeah.
you're doing this kind of thing, I mean, who's like vouching for you and what are exactly you showing? So I mean, that was like I started like my public display of myself was like putting out just like on my own personal social media pages videos of myself doing covers, and then as I wrote my own songs doing some of those, um and then getting into the studio with Jake here and like getting an actual like song produced. That was like I feel like a huge open the door moment as far as like booking shows and stuff. It helps incredibly just to be able to show a finished product to whoever you're trying to book a show with.
Like an audio resume or audio like
Yeah,
business
exactly.
card.
And
Like here you
yeah,
go.
exactly.
Here's what I can do. Here's what I
Because you
sound
can
like.
hand them a business card. I mean, that's still helpful, but uh they want to know that you're not just a
Oh, yeah.
fake.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm
like a
sure-
phony, like that you're gonna be awful, and they're like people are gonna walk right out of their bar.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, just to know that you have a voice, you have some talent, you have something there. But yeah, I got some shows coming up. I've been playing some here off and on now. I'm kind of like going back and forth, juggling a few different things with like career wise and just going through my mind about where my next steps in life with and outside of music. And so that's played into it, but I'm still pursuing like adding more dates and stuff to play. Got a lot of stuff upcoming in May and in throughout the summer. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Um, what about when you started to actually get your playing and everything together and you're doing shows and then you of course you came into the studio, you felt that you're ready, the songs were developed enough. Was there a point in between there where you felt like you found your sound, like what makes Carson sound like Carson?
That's an interesting question. I feel like there wasn't a defining moment really that like where I was like, oh, this is kind of me. I guess I feel like you craft that over like a course of a couple. Um, in my situation, like maybe I had like 3, 4 songs, and then excuse me, but like 3 or 4 songs where then I kind of was like, okay, there you didn't when you're building them, you didn't really think they're that connected and like had a similar sound, but then when you look at them, you're like, okay, I do kind of have like a unique uh sound, and like this is kind of me and what my music is like. You have like your influences of like what you kind of like, and I know when I came into the studio, there was a lot I was unsure about. That's why like I would encourage if anybody's feels like they're at that point, they're ready to come into a studio, or if they even have questions, like Jake is such a great resource. I mean, he opened the door a lot for me and like just opening my eyes about even stuff within myself about what I really wanted and stuff that I liked and how we could translate that into my own work. But because I had artists that I like idolized and like how I like to style their music, and even down to like a particular instrument in a song, like me and Jake would talk about like, oh, really want to incorporate something like this, or I like the fiddle part in this song, or oh, you hear that steel in the back. Me and Jake just love that pedal steel. We need to have that somewhere. And so it's kind of like just gathering from a pool of resources, like what exactly it is, and then playing around with it. I mean, there was stuff we put in there and took out, as we went along in the process. But I was if it wouldn't have been for Jake, I mean, I couldn't have. There's no way, at least in like me myself, I could have recorded or produced and done half of what we did. I feel like if you have the time, there's maybe you could self do some recording.
Yeah,
but
it's one of those trade-offs of like either you have to invest time or you're gonna have to invest some money and trust another person to work with you. That kind of thing. There's a trade-off.
And in my eyes, it was way worth the investment in like coming down here to meet with Jake and have the studio and the equipment, and just feel like it's kind of like a sense of assurance that like, okay, we know, like he knows what we're doing. He's done this before. I felt kind of clueless, but it was nice.
You came with the perfect attitude, and sometimes that's really understated sometimes, but you just came in like, oh, this is kind of what I want. What do we have to do? I want to learn.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of direction. And then you came in with, like I said, you listed all those artists. You kind of knew the outside sound of what you wanted it to be, and then just step by step.
Yeah, like I would be lying if I said I walked in and it wasn't like it was like a little intimidating, not like Jake himself, but just like the
I'm very intimidated.
Just like the atmosphere. You see like the equipment and like some lights and like the equipment and like in the guitars and everything. You're like, oh, I really need to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, a little bit overwhelming.
I don't know if I actually know what I'm doing. Maybe I should just take a step back out.
No. But it's just, it can be overwhelming.
But I think that's like kind of the underlying message through all this, at least for me, when the studio and just getting out in public and just put yourself out there a little more. And you got to gain that experience. You're gonna have to explore a little bit and make yourself a little uncomfortable. I think that's
fantastic advice.
Helpful for like the creative process. That's how I really feel like I said, there wasn't a defining moment, but I feel like that's what's helped me discover me and my sound is I had to be uncomfortable at times.
Makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of good nuggets in there. I really appreciate. So for the next question, we were talking about you and how you found your sound. So after you found that sound, I really think a big part of your sound, I mean, besides that your songwriting skills and the amazing way you use and phrase words, I would say is your voice. When did you know you had kind of something special going with your voice?
I think that was that took time too, quite a bit of time where like I said, I just kept everything so kind of internal and private. I would just sing at home and in the car all the time. And I felt like, okay, I can sing. I felt pretty good. And but I would just keep it to myself. And then I would share it with my friends. And then they were my family and my friends. Like you get your parents, like, of course, like that's like their job is to like hype you up.
Right.
And tell
support.
You like, oh yeah, you're good. And so that was, you take that for what it's worth. But they were like, no, seriously, you're good. And then I had all these, my friends were like, no, you're actually really good. Like you need to sing. And I remember my roommates in college they were always encouraging me to sing. And I still was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready because I was still trying to work on the guitar. I wanted to be a little better on the guitar. They're like, you should post a video. And I'm like, no, I can't. Cause I am a perfectionist a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so I just wanted to feel a little more ready and like more polished. And I think looking back, it's definitely okay to not be ready because I don't even think it's
a tough lesson to learn.
I still have lots of moments right now where I don't feel I'm ready.
There's a whole episode coming out later through this that's kind of hitting that exact point where sometimes it's just better to do it instead of, because I'm the exact same way where it's like, I want to refine this. I don't want to put it out until it's perfect. I have to have this, this piece of equipment or this piece of equipment.
And if you would have like told me that, like, you just got to do it, I would have fought you to the end about that. Like, no, I can't. But inevitably that's what I kind of just did. like defied my own personal preferences and said, and like finally just like I got to make myself uncomfortable. And I remember I posted, like I said, on like social media, and that was kind of the extent of it yet. I hadn't ever done um took my guitar out or played anything in front of anybody outside my parents, my family. Um Even though like I felt like I maybe could have, but I still just was in my head saying you shouldn't yet. You shouldn't yet. You need to work on the guitar more. But like I would say you need to, looking back, I would have definitely told myself just go for it because I feel like that's what really makes you grow the most.
Oh yeah, there's no better way to learn.
And so then I just had that stuff out. And then I all of a sudden was getting I got asked to come perform at our county fair in Plains.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you sing at our county fair? And that was like the first big like really like, oh no, like I should do this, but I like then that internal voice saying you're not ready, but it was I accepted it.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of guy, I'm the kind of person that just I'm a people pleaser too, so like
Right.
I couldn't say no, even though I tell myself you need to say no. I couldn't say no because I'm like, oh, I can't let people down. And so that became that was like another goal then. That was like a short-term goal, was keep working on it so that like you don't feel completely freaked out from when you have to come do this.
That date that you had to like, okay, we got to get
Yeah,
here.
here's the date. And I didn't even have like a ton of time to focus on it. I was working throughout the summer, but it was like, I know like, okay, on that weekend, I'm going to play the fair. And the real fun part about that time was I had a band. I had a couple of my buddies, Trayton and Mason. So we had a drummer and a lead guitarist, and I felt like incredibly more comfortable having like a lead guitarist because then you just kind of focus on rhythm, and that was more like definitely more what I was comfortable with at that time. And so just having him there to play that, and then like a drummer is a huge thing.
Oh,
like
yeah.
keeping that tempo, it's like a sense of security when it comes to being a musician. It's
Right.
like knowing. Yeah,
You
so
don't feel
if
like
you
have to
make a
carry
small
everything.
mess up, people don't notice it
Right.
when you got even a 3-piece band like that. So, and we got to practice like maybe 5 times that summer, and we just kind of threw it together last minute. But that was like a big learning experience for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I even though I kept trying, like freaking myself out, the paranoia of like going to do that, but in the end, it was a huge, I think, leap in my like at least coming out then individually and then going to perform.
Right. So
I
at this
believed in
point-
myself.
Right. Yeah. I got that confidence boost.
Because I got a ton of feedback from there. Like, oh, you're so good. We never knew you could sing. Like all these people in my community, like, we never knew you could do that. And like, you need to do more of this. And so it's a huge confidence boost. So
that is
definitely
fantastic.
worthwhile.
Yeah. That's a great bit of just walking people through it, especially for people who have never done this or, like you said, might be stuck in that rut of what's my next step kind of idea. Here's when it's kind of
if
like,
you
just
get-
do it. You're at that point, you know how to play, you've got songs.
I would say, yeah, if you're at that point where I was, where even if you don't feel like you're that polished of a guitar player, I mean, if you feel like you can accompany yourself and you're got some confidence, I mean, just go do it.
Yeah.
Go
yeah.
do it.
Well, let's maybe take it from a different angle. Like you said, you had these songs. You kind of had the idea of like you knew you had these frameworks all worked out. Looking back after spending a couple months working together and working in the studio, what would you saying to somebody else, like they're thinking, hey, should I be stepping into the studio at this point? What would you tell yourself looking back? Like either, what couple things might you go over?
Yeah, like I said, when I showed up at the studio, I was like a little bit like, oh, you made a mistake. Like not because of anything that I felt about it, Jake or the studio. It was all like my internal like, oh, you're actually not ready for this stage. Like you should probably go back and work on it a little more and like come back with more a better idea of what you want to do and how it sound. But the truth of it was like I don't think I would ever discovered that all on my own. Like I needed to have somebody who knew what they were talking about, and just to talk about these things a little more in depth. And it can be a little scary, but the studio was huge for me, and it was something I always wanted to do, and because I feel like that's everybody's kind of goal now. Maybe not, but that was like I always thought that would be so cool if I could just get something out. Because it's not. It's nowadays. It's like you just want to be able to get something out on like Spotify.
Yeah, it's all about
streaming.
content
Streaming is it's like all over our lives now. So I wanted to just be like, oh yeah, you can look me up on Spotify. You can look me up on here, and so that became another driving goal. Like that'd be you got to go make yourself uncomfortable again. Go to the studio. And once I heard of this opportunity, that was another part where here in Montana, just as a whole, and then like Western Montana, I had no idea, no leads about where do you even go to record
right? Yeah,
music.
especially in a small community, it's like you feel like you're limited with your resources.
Yeah, exactly. I had thought that like a couple of years ago even. So I bought like the most basic little interface and microphone you can get, and it was like I'm gonna learn how to do it myself. And that motivation comes and goes just right out the window as soon as you start seeing some of it. And
yeah, you kind of know pretty quick if this is gonna be for you or if it's not.
Yeah.
Once you like start just a little bit, scratch that surface, you're like, oh, there's a lot beneath.
And I thought it was super interesting, but with everything else going on, like I was like full-time studying for like pre-medicine was my undergraduate degree, and I was like I don't have this looks like a pretty big time commitment to try to figure out how to run this interface and like actually record past the bare minimum of just hitting record, because I didn't want to just sound like crap. I wanted it to, if I was going to do it, I wanted,
you wanted to a certain level you wanted to achieve.
There was a certain level I wanted to achieve, and I didn't, so I was like, if it's just gonna be a waste of my time right now. So I didn't, that thing barely came out of the box.
Yep.
Needless to say, barely came out of the box, and that was that. But so back to that, where I was like, oh, I don't even know. I've never heard of a studio. I'm sure they exist somewhere in Missoula or Kalispell, but where do you even go? I had no idea. And fortunately, I'm from Plains, and then like Tanner Laws, who was a guest on here earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner he's doing the same thing. He's like, he's ahead of me in the game, kind of like how he's started his career, and he's doing awesome things. But I saw he had shared like when he was working in the studio with Jake, and I was like, well, there's somebody's doing something. There's somebody that must be somewhat close. I didn't know exactly where, but I'm like, I look into this a little more. So I was checking out Jake in the studio, and I pondered it for a little while. Like, okay, maybe I should. And that was another moment where like I just kept telling myself, no, are you ready for a studio? Is he gonna think you're an idiot? Like,
right? Yeah, that self-doubt going on.
Yeah, the self-doubt. And so I reached out to Jake, and it was the best thing that I possibly could have done at that time. Yeah. I'm like so glad that I've made that decision, because
also very glad.
Now we're sitting here, and now I have music out that sounds fantastic, and
man, it's good. I really like it.
And hoping to do more.
So you just barely touched on something there I want to go a little deeper on, and that was, I guess I was getting, doing my pre-med, but like I said, one of the episodes that we did early on to try to build a foundation was about learning to balance and how to do that. And you might be one of the most well-rounded human beings I've ever met, and especially at your young age. So to all of us who are a little bit older, screw you. But anyway, no, you have so much that I remember we were doing the album and you were working on your pilot's license, and you just recently got accepted to go to med school in Boise.
Yes, yep, I did.
So, I mean, you are Mr. I have things on my plate and I have choices. Can you maybe talk a bit about how it is going through life, trying to balance these things and make it work together?
Yeah, no, for sure. I can try to shed some light on that. I feel like it's different for everyone, and it depends on like what you're doing, and like what you're trying to prioritize. Because I feel like I've had focus shift consistently all the time. And I guess I'm like consistently inconsistent because
I love it.
There's been times where like I put music at the forefront, and then there's times where I've then put it back on the back burner. And like through college, it was kind of it was on the back burner. I was just like learning, and it was one of those things where like I wanted to be able to do it on some scale one day. And like I said, like that goal of like just having my own music and having it out to share. So that was there in the back of my mind. But at the same time, I was doing, I in high school and stuff, I'd wanted to go to medical school. I wanted to become a physician, and so that I was doing pre-medical studies down in Bozeman at Montana State at the same time as doing like this, starting my musical foundation. And then I got to the point where they were kind of like coexisting, and I graduated and then got all my medical application stuff, which is like really extensive process, like taking the MCAT's a huge exam. And so then it's like focus shift again. Like kind of, I set the music down. It's like not, I'm gotta get my applications, gotta get volunteer hours and shadowing and this and that, the other thing. And so it's okay. I feel like it's okay, to get sidetracked. It's okay. And to set it aside for some time is okay too. I think it almost may be beneficial.
Right. Yeah. Growth comes in a lot of areas.
Yeah, because if you're just sitting there in a rut for a long time, I mean, it's okay to shift your focus and work on something else that you enjoy and like, and with maybe other goals that aren't even related to music. And that's kind of what I did at various times. So I finished getting my applications and stuff done, and then during the summer, I work as a fly fishing guide.
Mm-hmm. Of course, why not? Kind of like as you do.
Yeah. The various things I do, and so that is like a family business kind of thing that's been passed down, and so that's what I would do. But I would tell people, like my clients, I would tell them like, oh yeah, I'm trying to be a doctor, and then I have some music that I'm working on. I play a little bit, and they're like, oh man, that's so cool. Do you play any shows? And like I kind of wasn't at the time, so that was like another like, oh, I need to try. I need to pick it up a little bit on the music thing while I can. Because being like a guide, I kind of had like a little bit of freedom in building my schedule. Like I could plan, if as long as it was in advance, I could plan to like if I had a show schedule, I could just say I couldn't do this or I could do that. So I did have a little bit of freedom there, which worked out, and that's how I kind of started being able to fit some shows in a little bit more and more. And then I didn't get in. Like that was a big thing. Turning point again was I didn't get in my first cycle into medical school, and it was like it's this huge, big, discouraging thing. And I was like, what am I going to do now? I'm not like, what am I going to do now?
Right.
Like
but
give up.
What's my next step while I'm waiting to do this?
Yeah, because there's such a long, drawn out process. I mean, you get your applications in, like finished up, and that's in like May, June time frame. If you're like, if you're on top of your game and getting it in as soon as you can. And then you got primary applications, secondary applications, and then interviews if they invite you to do so. And then you don't hear back for these long periods of time. I mean, you're talking about like an 8-month time frame of like really just not knowing. You're kind of like up in the air. You're hoping, like, oh, I'm gonna get in somewhere. But then if you don't, like me in that case, in that first year of application, then it feels like you almost then you're like, well, first of all, you got to look at the area, like address the areas that they were of concern.
Of course,
and
right.
So then you're like, what do I need to do? And that kind of thing. But also for me, so it was around like November, December, I was kind of like feeling like, okay, doesn't look like I'm going to get in this cycle. And what am I going to do right now? And another thing that this then brought me back to the music was, I was finding myself with a little more spare time, and there was nothing I could do at that time as far as like for the medical side of things. I was kind of waiting on the application, so I started getting back into the music again, and that's when I was really started writing more and more, and I made the decision to move to Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna do this because it was one of those things where, if not now, then when? I always wanted to. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. All kids got like different dreams, but like when I had decided that like singing was one of my big passions and dreams, that was like a goal too.
Right. That's a heck of
Nashville.
A step.
Want to at least see it and experience,
well,
because
we got to dig into that. So you're taking this little bit of time in between where you, like you said, you don't have any more you can do while you're trying to for the next cycle.
Yeah.
And you moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
What was that experience
I
like?
had quite a few
What
people
did you gain
thought that was
afterwards
a
looking
crazy
back?
thing to do. Like, why are you doing that?
Right, I bet.
I got nothing better to do. Like, why
what
not
else
move
am
to
I gonna do? I'm
Nashville?
young. I can do whatever.
And I never did have like plans to do there, like go like long term, unless something crazy were to happen. But, yeah, sorry, what was your question again?
Oh, I was just so you went to Nashville, and looking back after all that, what did you pull from that? What did you learn?
There was a lot of valuable bits and pieces out of the Nashville. Like I said, I wasn't there like a long time. I'm like no claim to say I'm like a Nashville expert. Like, oh, I know all the things like Nashville, so I'll and I know the ins and outs of all the business and industry there. I would never claim that, but just to go in and see it, there was like incredible value to that. What I took away from it kind of was it helped me a lot. Just seeing how other people and like they're of no better place. I mean, there's songwriters on every corner. And just seeing how these people who I considered, kind of like professionals, like
Right.
they do this for a living, seeing what their process was and seeing that they have different ways of doing it too. Just kind of like how I had found out that not every song starts off with a melody or a chord progression or lyrics. It can be a variation of all the three, and seeing that it's okay to just have differences in how you create stuff, and then being able to collaborate with people and work on like things I'd always just independently wrote, and I still mostly have, just because I've lived in like rural areas and haven't been surrounded by people that really
Right.
until I was in Nashville. And then I wrote with some guys, and that was a really cool, fun experience.
Yeah, you gotta see somebody else's
right
process.
with people and see how they do it and like how they can contribute and help and make it
that's so cool.
make it a kind of a group assignment. And but then just the whole scene down there also kind of changed my perspective about then how the music stuff works back here. What I learned, I mean, the world has changed so much too, as the music industry. Years ago, like Nashville, especially if you were like a country artist and stuff, Nashville was the place. Not just like that you wanted to go, like you had to go.
Yeah,
if you
there was no
really,
choice, yeah.
if you were going to like attempt at making it on the radio or being big, you had to go to Nashville.
It was a concrete step in that process.
Yeah, and so that was like a little bit in the back of my mind, like, if you ever want to make this a reality, you kind of have to go there. But at the same time, with like how our culture is building, we got like TikTok, we have Instagram, YouTube, and all these different social media things where you can promote yourself. I feel like the game has changed so much. You're seeing these artists they're advertising themselves now, and you don't have to have a recording label,
right? Yeah,
and you don't have to have a manager and the people. Like, you can get your stuff out there on your own now, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's impressive.
You're seeing people
grow to a pretty big point without having all those things that used to really drive and kind of almost like a gatekeeping thing. Like, if you didn't have it, you weren't going to grow. That's almost all gone.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a gatekeeping thing, because I mean, even you're talking not that long ago. I mean, like 20 years ago. Like, how were you going to get, if you were in small town Montana? How were you going to
leave? You had
to leave. How were you going to get anything out there for anybody to know your name? So yeah, that's like how I feel like it's changed. And so then when I got to Nashville, it was still like the music scene there is incredible, and there's so many people doing it, but it also was like very overwhelming.
Oh, I can only imagine.
It was very overwhelming for someone like me, not just, I mean, because of the city size and everything, coming from a small town, but on the music side of things, just being surrounded by so much talent. I mean, the level of the expectation of how good you need to be there is like so much higher for people to even be impressed. And that's kind of what was my biggest takeaway, I'd say, from there. Was there were so many people doing the same thing, and everybody was so good that you wouldn't even like turn ahead. It's like, oh, yep, it kind of was expected. It was expected you needed to be good. And then, like, to earn a spot, even there's so many people, to earn a spot even in a singer-songwriter round was like a hard thing. You had to fight for one, and people get like defensive over it.
Oh yeah.
It's like kind of like their turf, like, oh, it took me 2 years to get this, so like, well, I'm not going to help you out. So there wasn't, I mean, you can kind of sense who are the actual good people that are trying to help you, but there's a lot of people that they just kind of give you the cold shoulder there because it is a cutthroat
That's exact.
business.
Cutthroat is the exact word. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
just everybody. There's still a lot of institutionalized people there from the old days.
Yeah.
Where it still feels like you're fighting a bit of that system. So it's really interesting to hear that that's what you took away from it and really came back to Montana, and we're in a small.
Well, what I really discovered was that coming back to Montana, they're actually like the level of appreciation for like me and like playing these little small shows was people appreciate my music and me playing so much more than I could there, because it's so like the market's like flooded there.
Yeah.
People,
so you got the positive side of being in the smaller community.
Yeah,
which is
like
really cool.
When I come back, it's kind of like a new perspective of seeing everybody like how much they actually enjoyed it. People are like so in tune, and like in every crowd I play for here, like locally, there's always several people that are like watching you actually like intensely, and they love hearing it. They're like singing every word. They like want to hear requests of like stuff, and they're invested in you being there. Like they're just all for it.
That's so true.
But there, it's like you were just
take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it. And unless you were somehow just like blew the roof off the place, more often than anything, if you were like got noticed, it was because you were awful.
Yeah, it's
because that was unexpected.
It's either you stand out for the wrong reasons, or you just like everybody else. 99% of people in those large areas, you just blend in.
Yep, exactly. And so that was like my major takeaway from that. I knew it was going to be a short-term kind of thing in Nashville, but it was a lot of fun and incredibly valuable for learning wise and just music.
Well, you sharing that with us is so next level especially for people that are just trying to figure out what this is and how to develop it. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Of course.
I feel like there's so much more to go on with you, but we might have to have you on again. But let's just talk about you as we're winding this down. What's going on with you? So going forward, you're going to go to med school, but what do you have looking forward?
Yeah, so I got accepted into med school, and that was my last big kind of change of focus again. It was like reestablishing that. I was like, wow, so this is going to happen. And that reality sunk in. And fortunately, the timing just worked out well with getting into the studio with Jake, and then how that project went. We finished up the 5 songs and felt really good about them and got them put out. And like right about the time I got like found out that I was accepted to med school about right when those released. And so it felt good to like
almost serendipitous there.
It would have been like really challenging. I would have had like all these mixed feelings if we were like right in the middle of recording.
Yeah, it's hard to, that can't be your main focus. It's hard.
Yeah. And so finding out that news, the timing of it did work out well. But so yeah, I'm going to med school. That'll start at the end of July down in Boise, which is, it's somewhat close to home. We're staying in the Mountain West. I just went down there recently, and Boise's a cool place. It's a lot bigger than what I'm used to, but
right.
It's still got parts of it that have a nice feel to it. Like you're not in a huge urban area. I guess for a big city, it's got a small town feel. If that makes any sense at all.
There, yeah.
But so I'm probably, I'm going to get to a point where, med school is really intense, especially like in the first couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm already fully anticipating there's going to be a lot less time for the music stuff, unfortunately. But the thing is because that's so intense, they encourage that you need to have things like this, hobbies and interests.
Something to balance.
Yeah,
right.
Something to balance with it, because otherwise you're going to get burnt out on your studies.
That's so smart.
And so I think, I'm trying to keep the positive light on this, and that hopefully maybe then when the time and situation presents itself, that I can go out in like Boise and maybe find some smaller places
build a little bit of a fan
play
base
out. And
there.
It's kind of like a release from like the med stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Just,
and then as like everything else, as you're going through the whole thing, you'll have more fuel for writing songs or adding your perspective into a new sound or a new thing. So that's awesome. So for our listeners, if they want to kind of follow you and see that, where can they go to see when you're posting shows or to hear any new music that might come out in the next couple of years or 5, 10 years?
So I usually post my stuff just on my personal social medias. It's just Karsen Krebs, and that's Karsen with a K, Karsen. on Facebook and Instagram is where I'd say I'd like keep up the most actively on posting about like show dates and stuff. And then we're like new music, and like I said, we've had those 5. They're still, relatively new, but hopefully I'm hoping to get some more. I'm always working on music. And so hopefully I get a couple more finished up, and I want to get back in the studio here with Jake.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Hopefully before that date. And even if that didn't happen, I know this will not be the end. I know I'll be seeing Jake again.
Oh yeah,
sure.
there'll be more in the future, and
we'll
all be looking forward to that.
There's not any studios around here but Jake. No.
No, there's many, but if you find somewhere you're comfortable, that always helps too.
I would highly recommend Jake. It's been an incredible experience.
Thank you so much.
Just all of it. Incredibly insightful and helpful guy.
Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time and helping everybody else out and kind of get an idea of what it's like. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Karsen Krebs, please take a second to go listen to his music, visit his socials, and just give him a little bit of support where you can. So thanks again, man.
Thank you, guys.
All right. You guys have a good one. Thank you for listening. Bye. Oh, hey there. Didn't see ya. Thank you for joining me on In the Round. In the Round. I don't know where that music came from. But anyways, this is our end of the video segment where we just take a second to thank you again for listening and watching. And also to thank those special people that make this possible, our Patreon supporters. As you can see, they are listed here. Yeah, okay. They get the joke. We can stop now. Clearly, we don't have any supporters yet. We're just launching. But if you'd like to join our community and be one of the first few to jump in, we'd really appreciate it. And you could start to see an acorn blossom into a tree. So really appreciate that help. If you'd like to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get more of this content, it should be down there somewhere. Or you can give us a like if you enjoyed the video. So thanks again, and see you again soon.